Hello you guys, and welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. My name's Katie. As a cold front is coming in to the US, specifically North Carolina, I've decided to reminisce on the warm temperatures of Orlando. This past year, my husband and I have taken our baby to both Universal Studios in Orlando and Disney World, and we went to both of those places twice. We started when our daughter was about 6 months old. Our recent Disney trip, actually January of this year technically, she was about 18 months old. So I wanted to go over the biggest differences that I have seen between Universal and Disney when it comes to taking your baby. The first thing I want to talk about is the rider swap option. Now, rider swap is basically you can still ride all the rides your baby can't ride, you just have to swap. And these are pretty big differences between Disney and Universal. So at Disney, one parent will actually wait in line, so you will wait in the regular queue while the other parent can walk around with said baby or multiple children, whoever is not tall enough to ride the ride. Let's say this happened most often where Jesse would wait in line and I would walk around with our daughter. Once he's through the line, I technically get like a lightning lane pass, and I had it on my Magic Band or your ticket, and so once they come off the ride, you swap, and then I would get a lightning lane pass essentially to go through the lightning lane line. With that premise, there are some pros and cons. The big pro is you all don't have to wait in line together. Like, you don't have to bring your baby. So it was nice when our daughter would be asleep. We wouldn't have to take her out of the stroller to carry her through the line. One parent could just keep the laps going to keep her asleep while the other stood in line. So that was really nice. But the big con is you have to split up. You can't stay with your party even through the queue. So let's say there's a ride that I don't want to ride, but it's Disney, so the queues are themed really nicely. I can't just walk through the queue with our child. Like, you can't stay together. You have to be riding the ride. And another con is you potentially have to wait in the lightning lane line. So even though the swapping parent, the person who gets the lightning lane, that may be a few minute wait, which I mean is nothing to a queue that's like 30 minutes, but it's not like they take you right up to the front of the line. Now cut to Universal's rider swap program. Most of the big rides have family rooms. So you wait in the queue with your family, and once you reach a certain point, you are pulled off into the family room. For example, when Jesse was going to ride the Velocicoaster, I was then taken into the family room, and they give you kind of this paper. So Jesse kept going in the line and I got a paper. So whenever he would be done with the ride, he would meet me back in the family room. I would take my little piece of paper to the cast member and they take me right to the front of the line. So the pros of this is that it's a nice family room. There's changing table in there. Yes, it's out in the open, but it's still an option. There's a TV playing a show or the movie of what the ride is themed after. So if you were to ride Hagrid's, they're playing Harry Potter in the family room. They're nice and air conditioned, so if you're there in the summer, it's super nice to sit in there in an air conditioned room with your child. You're able to see the themed queues even if you don't want to ride the ride. So another example is Forbidden Journey is a Harry Potter ride in the Hogwarts castle. I cannot ride that ride. I get motion sick way too easily. I still like to walk through the castle, so I was still able to do that. I was still able to walk through the castle and see all the cool details and the theming, but not actually ride the ride, because I could just stay in the family room, and once Jesse would be done, we can just leave. And once the first parent is done, so once Jesse's done riding first, I am taken to the front of the line. There's no lightning lane line that you have to wait in. You are the next person in line. But cons are you have to wait in line altogether. A big con is that you have to wait in line together, and some of those lines can really rack up a high wait time, like Hagrid's. That wait when we went was always around 2 hours, and so that's a long time to stand in a line with a baby, and if your baby's asleep in the stroller, you have to take them out to carry them through the line. So there are pros and cons, but both parks do have rider swap options. but they just look a little different. I should note that this video, I went to Universal Orlando before Epic Universe is open. I'm sure some things in Epic Universe might change some of the things here that I discuss in this video, but for the main two parks of Universal Orlando, like that's what I'm talking about. The second thing is dining reservation. At Disney, there are so many different sit-down restaurants as well as like fast casual, you know, counter service restaurants, but there's so many sit down places that you need to have reservations for. So pros of a dining reservation is you have a guaranteed time that you get to sit down in air condition, and that's really important in Florida, especially if you're there in the summer, taking time to sit in the AC and get water, and you will have a table available for you. You know it ahead of time. You know what time your lunch or your dinner or your breakfast is just nice. And if you have a baby, like this whole video is about, they will have a high chair ready at your table, which is another great thing. A small note about dining in Disney, what we have experienced, sit-down restaurant, you're not supposed to bring your stroller in there, so you're supposed to take your baby out, but sometimes, and it's worth an ask, sometimes if your baby is dead asleep, like our baby, multiple times at Disney, was asleep during our reservation, they try their best to make accommodations where you can bring your stroller in, but that is pretty much the only time they make that exception for strollers is if your baby is asleep, and that's also hoping that the table, you can be moved to a table where they can accommodate that. So it probably won't happen every time. It's worth an ask, but it's nice to walk into a restaurant, you know you have your table already reserved, and they're gonna have a high chair there, and it's just nice to have that like definitive plan. And a con with that, obviously a con is you have to make these reservations well in advance, and sometimes even if you try to make certain reservations well in advance, they might not have them. So you have to make reservations well in advance and hope and pray that there are reservations available. And then, like I mentioned, a con is you can't bring your stroller in, but I would definitely ask if your child is like actively sleeping, if you are able to be accommodated for that. So at Universal, pretty much all of the restaurants don't require a reservation because they're all basically counter service restaurants, except for like the Mikos, the Greek place, I believe that requires a reservation, but we never ate there. So pros is you don't have to worry about reservations. Whatever sounds good to you, you can just go and have. You can just walk into the restaurant at any time. To a lot of the restaurants, you can bring your stroller in because, like I said, most of the restaurants are like counter service, and so same thing with Disney, you can bring your stroller into counter service restaurants, and that's just nice. So we love the Minion Cafe, and we were able to bring our stroller into the Minion Cafe. So cons, if it's a busy day, you may not be able to be seated right away. You may have to wait a bit, especially at the popular restaurants, so the Three Broomsticks and the Leaky Cauldron in the Harry Potter areas. Those tend to have the highest waits or just the most people there because it's super cool. And why would you not want to spend the entire time in the Wizarding World of Harry Potter? I don't know, but those definitely can, you can wait a little bit longer because you're not guaranteed, you don't have a reservation for that restaurant, if that makes sense. And there may not be a high chair available. We never really ran into that issue, but like I said, if it's busy and all the high chairs are in use, you may not have one. It's similar to any like counter service restaurant. There's a limited number of high chairs that you have to go physically bring to your table, and if they don't have any, if they're all in use, then you may not get one. But if you can bring your stroller in and it has a tray, you can kind of get around that. Now we're going to talk about one of my like weirdly favorite topics actually are changing tables. I am always on the hunt for the most private changing table for my child. It makes me feel comfortable, and just like, you know, it gets really chaotic in a bathroom at any theme park, Disney or Universal. So to have a little bit of privacy is easier for, especially when my daughter was a lot younger. You know, all the noise and stuff would kind of get her overwhelmed, and sometimes she would cry when during that time. So it was nice to try to find like the more private changing areas. For Disney, unfortunately, I did not find that many private changing tables. So most of the changing tables, I say, are out in the open. So you walk through the door and they're like off in a corner. I mean, it's not always front and center. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's off in a corner. They're not private, they're not in a handicap stall, nothing like that. They're out in the open. That's the only way I know how to say it. They're out in the open. Some of the companion bathrooms, so Disney has companion bathrooms throughout their parks, and some of those companion bathrooms have changing tables, so that was nice. So Jessie and I could both go into the restroom at the same time and kind of like both change her. But not every companion bathroom has one. I've actually found the ones that we stumbled across, more companion bathrooms did not have changing tables versus ones that did. I did not find really any private changing tables in Disney, minus like the handful of companion bathrooms. And this was true even in dining restaurants. There still was not a private changing table, even in, like I said, a handicap stall. All of the changing tables I saw were like in a corner or out in the open. So cut to Universal, and it's basically the same thing. Even in the restaurant bathrooms, even though they don't have a lot of restaurant bathrooms, it's kind of like you have to exit the restaurant and go to the restroom like next to it. A lot of those just have the changing table out in the open, and it's the same. I should have mentioned this in the Disney one because Jessie made note of this too. It's the same in both men and women's bathrooms where the changing tables are out in the open. Same thing at Universal, changing tables out in the open, men and women's, except in the Minion Cafe. I have said so many times that pretty much any video I've talked about Universal, I've talked about the Minion Cafe. It is the best. The food is really good, and it has the most private changing table in all the parks. So in the Minion Cafe, it's in its own stall, so it's in a handicap stall. There's a sink in there, there's a changing table in there, so you are very private in that restroom. And it's also inside the restaurant, and Minion Cafe likes to blast the AC, so it's nice and cool in there, especially in the summer. It's just a nice perk. So Universal definitely has the Minion Cafe, and I like that more than any of the companion bathrooms at Disney, if I'm being honest. So character dining. That is a big thing at Disney. So Disney obviously has a lot of character dining options, not only at the resorts, but we're going to just talk about the park specifically. So in Magic Kingdom, they have Cinderella's Table, which is all the princesses, and they also have the Crystal Palace, and that's Winnie the Pooh and friends. We've done the Crystal Palace one, and that one was really cute. At Epcot, they have Garden Grill, and that's Mickey, Chip and Dale, and Pluto. Animal Kingdom, they have the Tusker House, and that's Safari, Mickey, Goofy, Donald, and Daisy. And lastly, at Hollywood Studios, it's Hollywood and Vine, and that is Minnie, Mickey, and I believe Goofy and Donald, but don't quote me on that. I've never eaten there before. Character dining can be a bit pricey. It is a buffet, so that does make it a little bit worth it. And if you bring a baby or a toddler, really any child under 3 years of age, they do eat for free. So that helps a little bit, so you're not paying for like a child to eat there. We like to say that this is probably the cheapest we're ever gonna be able to do this stuff. So if you want to do a character dining and you have one child and they're under the age of 3, it is probably going to be the cheapest way that you will do a character dining, and they're so fun. Universal, there is only one option for character dining, and I did not even know this existed, and that is for Marvel characters in Cafe 4, and that's in the whole Marvel area. So I'm assuming that requires reservations, so maybe that's another restaurant that requires reservation. The only other option than that is a breakfast with the Grinch, but that's only during the Christmas season, and again, I assume requires some sort of reservation for that. So not as many options for Universal to get like that immersive kind of character experience, which isn't bad at all, because they still have characters at Universal, but no really character dining options except the one. Park transportation. Disney also, it seems like they have way more hotels and hotel partners than Universal. I'm not sure if that's true, but to me it just seemed like there were so many more options for Disney. Most hotels are accessible by bus, so you take a bus to the parks to and from your hotel. Some of the more expensive resorts are actually on the monorail system. So like the Contemporary I know is a big one, and I believe the Polynesian is on the monorail system, so you wouldn't have to get on a bus. You could, at least to Magic Kingdom and Epcot, you could take the monorail, but to get to Animal Kingdom or Hollywood Studios, really you have to take a bus. Unless you're on one of the resorts that have access to the Skyliners. I think it's Pop Century and Art of Animation. They have access to the Skyliner, which can take you to Epcot or Hollywood Studios. So if you want to go to Animal Kingdom, I feel like you're riding a bus or you're driving. Like there's no other option for you for Disney transportation. If you want to park hop, so if you want to go from Animal Kingdom to Magic Kingdom, you have to use one of these modes of transportation, so like a bus or the monorail or the Skyliner or something like that. As long as it all connects, you can use Disney transportation. The buses can take a little bit longer. They could take a little longer to, you know, wait for the bus to get there and then actually take the bus back. We've stayed at 2 different hotels and resorts, but I would say it's a minimum of a 20-minute bus ride, because it's a bus and like trying to get out and there's traffic and getting to your hotel. So it's probably a minimum of a 20-minute bus ride depending on where you're staying. And that makes it a little bit more difficult to like hop back to the hotel for a quick nap and then go back to the park, because you have to fold your stroller, you have to take everything out of your stroller. Like it's a big deal. Like it's a whole process to get onto the bus with a baby or a toddler and then get off the bus. And so it just makes it a little more difficult to pop back and forth to the hotel and the parks, which isn't a bad thing. It's just something to keep in mind. Universal, most of the hotels are accessible by bus, but there's quite a few that are accessible by the ferry. And the ferry is not as big as it is at Disney World. They're smaller boats, but we stayed at a hotel, Sapphire Falls, and that is accessible by ferry. And that was so nice. It's a very short ferry ride to the parks. Basically drops you off at City Walk, which is kind of like the Disney Springs of Universal, but both of the parks are within walking distance from that, and you don't have to collapse your stroller. So again, if your baby is sleeping in the stroller, you can just push the stroller onto the ferry and your baby can stay asleep, and that's nice. You don't have to take them out. If you want to park hop between the 2 parks, you can either take the Hogwarts Express, which is always a fun experience, or you can just walk. Sometimes it's faster to just walk than to wait in line for the Hogwarts Express because they're that close together. Again, Epic Universe has not opened at this time, and I believe you'll have to like bus over to that one because it's significantly further away. It's not next door like Islands of Adventure and Universal Orlando, like Universal Studios is. So it's just something to keep in mind. I thought it was a lot easier to park hop back and forth, and many times during our stay, especially in the summer, we like went back to the hotel for like during the peak of the day and let our baby take a nap, hit the pool, and then had dinner back at the parks because it was just, everything was so close together. It made it a little bit easier. Okay, so the actual last thing I'm gonna talk about are the rides. And I think this is important too. Like, what can your baby do ride-wise at Disney, and what can your baby do ride-wise at Universal? There are so many rides at Disney that have no height requirement that your baby can do, especially, I would say, the most rides in general at Magic Kingdom. So the most rides your baby can do will be at Magic Kingdom. And I'm just gonna try to list off them off the top of my head. And so I'm definitely gonna miss some. So please like add more in the comments below if I miss any. So Magic Kingdom, you have Peter Pan, Winnie the Pooh, It's a Small World, you have the Carousel, the Teacups, Jungle Cruise. Is there anything else? Dumbo, Astro Orbiter, whenever that opens, the Carpets of Aladdin, all of those are basically the same ride. The People Mover, Pirates of the Caribbean. Is that it? Is that all the rides in Magic Kingdom? If I missed one, please let me know down below. But I'm pretty sure that might be all of them that have no height requirement. So let's move to Epcot. Remy's Ratatouille Adventure for some reason doesn't. Frozen does not have a height requirement. Living with the Land does not. The Spaceship Earth does not. They have a Finding Nemo ride. Oh, the Ariel ride in Magic Kingdom. Adding that one back on there. The Finding Nemo ride at Epcot does not have a height requirement. And I think that's it for Epcot. Oh, and the Grand Fiesta Tour, but that wasn't open last time we went. That doesn't have a height requirement either. Moving on to Animal Kingdom, I think it's only the Navi River journey now. I think Triceratops Spins used, like before it was closed, didn't have one, but don't quote me on that because we never went on it. But yeah, I think you can only take your baby on Navi River journey. Or if you wanted to take the train to Rafiki's Planet Watch, you can do that. Oh, you can do the train at Magic Kingdom. Or one of the Main Street rides, right? The cars on Main Street, you could take your baby on that. What's left? Hollywood Studios. You can do Toy Story Mania. Is that it? Is it just Toy Story Mania? Oh, Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway for some reason, but if I'm being completely honest, we took our baby on that and she did not enjoy that ride at all. So I think it's just those two that don't have height requirements. So that's still quite a few rides. Like I said, most of them are in Magic Kingdom, I would say. You can do the most rides there. That is really nice to be able to take your child and your baby on rides and not have to just ride or swap everything all the time. So it was fun to ride things as a family. At Universal, unfortunately, there are not many that a baby can go on. Really, when our daughter was like 6, 7 months old, she could only ride the Hogwarts Express. That was really all she could do. When we went back when she was about 11 months old, we talked to some cast members and they said that she could ride one fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish, or like the swirling ride in the Simpsons land, but only if they can sit up next to you by themselves are they able to ride those rides. So small little babies that you have to hold, I don't think you would be able to bring those only on the Hogwarts Express. Again, maybe some things will be different with Epic Universe, I'm not sure, but there are definitely way more rides that babies and toddlers can do at Disney than Universal. Thank you for sticking through all of my ramblings about the difference between Universal and Disney, well, with your baby or your toddler. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time. Bye!